Okay, so this is another developer log for Rifter, and today I'm going to be doing some work in Photoshop. I'm not sure if it's going to get used in the final sort of version, I guess you could say, of Rifter, but it's more for development to show my uh, different skills I've used and techniques. Instead of just using one piece of software, I've used Photoshop, I've used Maya, which is my 3D modeling software, and Photoshop I'm going to be using for the GUI today, and this is actually going to be a little thing that pops up in the beginning of the game. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to use it because this is all post commentary and I'm feeling sort of 50-50 at it for it at the moment. Here I'm just using some filter effects and editing the layers to create kind of a dash look. So it's kind of old wood. I'm following this steampunk theme still here. And I import some images from Google, just free stock stuff, to see if I can create something that looks like a radio transmitter. And the sort of radio transmitter I mean is something that you would look at and think, okay, well, this is what I use to communicate with people. A bit like a telephone. It's actually called a telegraphic communicator in the world of Rifter. That's part of the lore. I don't know if that's actually a thing in real life. I just thought telegraph and communication, telegraphic communicator. So here I'm just using sort of Photoshop to create it. I actually get a picture of a man who looks like some sort of inventor later on to bring in, and I also bring in some cogs and some dials to make it look like it's actually got some functionality. So I have three layers here. I have the wood, which is just a wood texture that I used. I have sort of a concrete texture, which is funny because it makes it look like old wood. And you can see some tears and sort of worn edges on it, I guess you could say. And I used a bevel and emboss on the exterior edge to make it look like metal. And it looks great, but it's not very functional. And here I'm just trying to use the pen tool to create some sort of dash, I guess you could say. I can't really explain it. It's kind of like a pattern, and I mirror it and I fill it in. And I add a bevel and emboss to that because I wanted a logo at the top to show who makes this particular device, like what company it's made by, which is nice, but so I experiment with the pencil here a little bit, and in the end I don't even use it because I don't like the way it looks, but it's always good to show my development of different skills and techniques. I don't really know what I'm doing here. I think I try and create some sort of pattern. My Photoshop skills aren't excellent, but I can, definitely use it to make what I want to make. Because I used Photoshop earlier on in some of the propaganda developer logs. Sounds really strange saying that, propaganda developer logs. I developed some posters posted around the city. And another thing I intend on doing for the final developer log, which is kind of going to be a gameplay-esque trailer of me showing my development up until a certain point. I want to add a airship scene, because I've got the airship in there, but I wanted to add another one where you're escaping from Brimstone and you're in the skies and you can see Brimstone below you. And that's going to be a pain in the ass to do, but I think it should be very fun at the same time. And I wanted to add, because I have my final show coming up soon, I have a show reel to produce, and I've done 80% of it. I just need to add the Rifter segment. I intend on adding Rifter at the end because it's sort of the most complex thing, I guess you could say, on my show reel. I've got the 3D modelling of the car I modelled, and then I've got my 2D platformer game, and then I've got this. I've got some other 3D games, but this is by far the most graphically impressive, and I think it'll look great on my show reel. So here I duplicated the pattern over, and I'm going to mirror it and try and rotate it. And I don't know what I'm doing here, I don't think. I try and change the levels and the colour around. So yeah, I just rotate it. So here you can see I'm using transform. And there we go, I flipped it. I figured it out eventually. It looks like underpants. That's why I don't like it. I don't use them in the end because it genuinely does look like underpants. But sort of backwards, or even just forwards, you know. So I'm trying to create like a gold plated sort of brass pattern. I bring some cogs in later, that looks really cool. And I use the same consistent filter effects or layer effects such as bevel and emboss on most of this. And I bring this down a few layers. I think I'd like to add a developer log for the latest bit of development on the gun, because in Rifter now there's actually a gun you get. I don't think you'll start with it. At the moment you do, it's very easy for me to change that, but I do have a gun in there now that you can shoot and reload, and it's very cool, and you can pick up ammo for it and such. I modelled that gun very early on in the Rifter development, and I used that as kind of a sort of basis to build the interactivity of Rifter on, and I didn't want to work on it anymore almost straight after I put it into the game because it was too basic, and I thought, why is there a gun in the game this early on? So I went back on myself and I traced back my steps to a point where I started doing all the 3D modelling and looking into the cultural influences in the Victorian era. This is all very posh stuff I'm talking about here. So once I had that down, as you know, I modelled a modular set builder which I could then repeat and rinse and repeat to build the city. I want to add a lighthouse. That'd be so cool. A working lighthouse, and then have that part of the show reel as well, because at the end of the day it's the interactivity that counts, and I think it would be cool to have a lighthouse that you can explore, and maybe you can even turn the lighthouse off for unknown reasons. Here we go, I'm adding the cogs in here. I didn't actually make this myself, this is just like stock images from Google or free DeviantArt stuff, because this is all student based, used for a student project, so I'm not actually going to make any money off of this at all. And even if I do try and put some sort of commercial funding into Rifter, or if I publish it commercially, it doesn't matter because it's all free stuff I've used and paid assets. I think the only asset I can think of that I've used scripting wise is the Ultimate FPS system, which is just so I can import my own weapons and the camera movement. But everything else, literally everything else you see visually is my own. Even the gun is. And the gun looks pretty damn cool in the latest version. I'm going to have to show that development, definitely. And it works swimmingly. So I used Ultimate FPS, which is an asset from the Unity Asset Store. I bought it a long time ago. Probably about a year and a half now it's been since I bought that asset. And since then I've used it for pretty much every single 3D game I've made. It's not always important though. So here I try embossing a pattern in, which looks damn cool, but apart from the bottom right here, which I don't like. And I try and move it up and desaturate it in a minute, because as you can notice it's an overlay, and I have to decrease the opacity because it creates a strange graphic. You can see it's like glowing wood, and I don't want that. I want it to be overlaid, but not to the point where it's blatantly obvious. So there you go, I turned down the opacity. It looks pretty cool. There we go. Yeah, I leave that on there too. And I also show some Unity development on this one towards the end. So yeah, back to what I was saying about Rifter and the gun. I've imported that in. It's working and it's awesome looking. And visually, all the buildings are my own. I can't record all of them being modelled because it would literally take me a year. Because I've got, I think, like 21, 22 different buildings now, something like that. Or maybe a little less, but I also brought them in and changed the textures around. And it takes a very long time to sit and record. Well, it takes a very long time to do, but recording it and the actual file size of the recording is mammoth. It's just huge, so I don't have the space to do it. And it's not very necessary either, because it's just me doing the same thing over and over again, just different. And I'd rather sort of summarize what I'm doing in 1 or 2 developer logs, like this one, on key parts of the Rifter development. So Photoshop and Autodesk Maya 2011, which is my modeling software, the architecture, and of course the programming and interactivity, which I've done none of. I have not programmed anything so far, because I do so much programming on my 2D platformer in my own spare time. I really don't feel like sitting down for hours on end and trying to program systems into Rifter. I did program a cutscene system, but it didn't work. Even though it worked perfectly for my 2D platform, it just didn't work for my 3D game, or this game, Rifter. As a final kind of piece to submit for my work, because Rift is so graphically intensive and I can't give it to the assessor to play, I'm going to do a sort of finalized gameplay trailer with developer commentary over the top of it. And I think a good example of this is BioShock, and there's quite a few other games that have done it where they've showed developer commentary at a gaming convention. And a good example is PAX. PAX is a gaming convention. You've got GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference. And I'm going to do something similar to that. So I'm going to bring in Rifter. I'm going to play Rifter, play through it for 2 or 3 minutes, however long it takes for me to get through the development. I'm going to have cuts here and there, showing different aspects of the game and different parts of the interactivity. So you get the gun. I also want to add a very large bit of interactivity, which is you get a objective at the beginning of the game. And that objective tells you to go and break into a building to receive your gun, because at the beginning of the game you're actually not given the gun straight away. Your employer tells you, okay, you need to go here to get your gun, because obviously you're a bounty hunter. What does a bounty hunter need? His weapon. So I was thinking of having maybe a system where you break in and it actually tells you that, go and break into this place and go to this location, get your gun, and that's the interactivity, done. And I get hopefully quite a good grade for that, because it shows a bit of depth. So you've actually got narrative with interactivity on the side, instead of just pick up items, because that's what I was going to do initially. I was going to have pickups around the city, which makes no sense. It's not a platformer, it's a 3D game, or it's an FPS. So here I'm just doing more overlays. I bring in this like clock widget and overlay it onto the original one, and I've got this which looks badass. I don't even think I use it in the end, or I think I removed the one in the back to use that one. And I also bring in a picture of a man, like I said earlier, and I make him look old and sketchy and kind of like a television set, because that's sort of what I'm going for on the telegraphic communicator. I just experiment with colors and end up going with like a brass texture, like a copper, and I'm really struggling here. I can remember doing this one, it's probably about a week ago I did this developer log now. Here I try and make it look like it's plated in to the telegraphic communicator. I keep saying that and it sounds so long-winded, but it sounds quite cool as well. I'd like to add for the final gameplay trailer, or developer log I should say, some more focused gameplay. So I was thinking of adding, obviously you getting the gun, but coming into the city would be cool. And if I get the lighthouse in there, which would be an awesome thing to build, and have the lighthouse spinning, because what happens usually is the light spins, not very fast, just rotates, to let sailors know, you know, here we are. And you come in on an airship, so the lighthouse is also functional that way too, because if you came in on an airship, it'd be exactly the same as a ship in the water. You'd need to see where you're going. And it'd be so cool to have part of that as the opening cutscene to the gameplay trailer. So you come in and you see the lighthouse, and you've got like brimstone on the left. You can see the lighthouse rotating, and it'd be nice. So here I tried to create like an outline for the face of Dorian Sprocket, who is Lysander Reach's employer, to be sort of placed in. And it works quite nicely in the end, although it does look like Comstock from Bioshock Infinite, which is another game I researched into a little bit, which is embarrassing because I didn't actually realise this until later on, and that's why I didn't use it in the end, because not everything I develop I want to use as a final piece of work, because there's just no need for it. And it's better to develop and take inspiration from things rather than develop and use every single piece of work. If you have to, then do, and also if it benefits you, then I guess you should. But for me, it's all about the learning process and more what I develop, how I develop my skills, rather than what grade I'm getting. It's more driven by how much I learn. And with Rifter I've learned a lot. I've learned how to build modular buildings, so tile sets. That's very fun stuff, and I'll definitely be using it in the future. And here I'm just messing around with the thickness, the outline. Why am I doing that? It needs to be like 3 or 4. Nope, I've just changed the width. So here, as you can see, I put the name in there. That's just to give you an idea of who you are talking to on the communicator. And it's of course Dorian Sprocket. So here I'm a bit worried about the text being too small for the player to see. So I scale it up a little bit. And shift click it into place. So here he is, Dorian Sprocket. Now, this is just a Google Images thing, and I can't really get done for copyright. As I said, I don't even know who this man is. I think he's actually someone very famous, which is bad because I remember reading about it, and he looked like a very dapper fellow, and it's definitely someone famous. It's not someone who invented like electricity or like Newton. It's not. It's not like someone like that. It's not like Einstein, or who else is really famous? Who discovered the guy who discovered penicillin? Someone like that. It's no one like that. It's actually just someone who was relatively well known for the creation of something. I can't remember his name now. It's like Alec something, I think. But it's irrelevant because I'm not using this anyway. But this shows my development. I hope you enjoyed this developer log. And in the next one, I'm going to be showing development for the gun, the Bulldozer 98, or the Bulldozer 89? Bulldozer 98, I think it's called. And that is the first gun in Rifter that you acquire. And yeah, it's going to be fun to share the development for that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next developer log.